Welcome back to League of Ireland Lowdown. You're with myself, Kieran Burke, and former League of Ireland manager Shane Keegan. Shane, how are you getting on? Are you enjoying the World Cup so far?
I am, Kieran, very, very much so now, to be honest. Yeah, I think there've been quite a lot of goals, hasn't there? I was a little bit kind of afraid. There was a lot of talk about the weather and the heat, meaning that teams would play with low blocks and might be hard to break down. But I think we're getting pretty high scoring affairs, decent games. And certainly when you look at the last 24 hours as we speak here now, you've got the world stars all delivering. Mbappe hitting two, Haaland hitting two, Messi hitting three. Yeah, it's been very enjoyable.
And of course, there's been a big League of Ireland theme at this year's World Cup as well. Pico Lopes with Cape Verde hitting global headlines after their incredible result against Spain the other day. It was a brilliant performance from Cape Verde and from Pico himself. He was tremendous at the back.
Kieran, it was so enjoyable. It's incredible how quickly you can become invested in a team that you knew little to nothing about only a short period of time beforehand. My wife was working that evening or that day, and when she came home that evening, myself and the young lad, there was maybe about 10 minutes left, and the onslaught was well and truly on, and the two of us were roaring and shouting at the TV and cheering on every clearance that Pico or any of the rest of the lads made, and could just see my wife looking at me in complete and utter bewilderment. She obviously had no idea the Pico story and could not figure out why the two of us were so enthused by this game and cheering them on. But an outstanding achievement by the team. And look, in a way, I suppose for those that are new to the Pico story, they maybe will have looked and thought to themselves, Jesus, this lad is very, very good. But for the rest of us, I mean, did he do anything that we haven't seen him do week in, week out for the last 10 years or so? I don't think so. Look, I'm sure you would have talked to him plenty of times yourself. An absolutely rock solid fella. You couldn't meet a sounder man. And look, the whole journey and the whole story, he's certainly getting plenty of publicity on the back of his LinkedIn sign up and all of this kind of crack. But he deserves every bit of it. You couldn't meet a better fella, and I'm just delighted that I suppose what we thought maybe was that Pico getting to the World Cup was going to be the story. Whereas the story has actually just snowballed massively on the back of that. There's so much more to him just landing out there after a performance like that. The only thing I'd throw out there is, Jesus, a pity it wasn't, two World Cups ago maybe. Because God knows what sort of move he could have got himself on the back of a performance like that. But hopefully more impressive performances from him and Cape Verde to come.
Well, look, when Shamrock Rover's getting back, and hopefully it's not for another while, yeah, it'd be unbelievable if they could get through the group stages. The European draws took place yesterday. Now, as we're speaking, we don't know who Shelburne are playing yet. The Conference League draws only happening today, but the Champions League and Europa League draws took place yesterday. Shamrock Rovers got Floriana from Malta. So hopefully Pico will be back to help Rovers go on a good European run. But that looks a really positive draw for Rovers. And the other draws that we got yesterday, Bohemians against St. Joseph's from Gibraltar, who we've seen play Irish teams in the last couple of years. And Derry City got CSK Sofia, which is a tough draw, but it's manageable at the same time. So could we be potentially set up for a good summer in Europe for the Irish clubs?
Listen, the first two would have to be very, very happy with their draws. They could hardly have asked for much better, I think. So I think they'll be very happy, very confident. I would imagine when you guys are chalking up the odds there, but I would think both teams would probably be favourites to progress potentially even. Yeah, the Derry one is a lot tougher. And obviously their form isn't anywhere near as impressive either. Although finally signs of light at the end of the tunnel, maybe with the result on Friday night. But yeah, look, seeing Pico, I suppose I saw one of the interviews. Actually, sorry, it wasn't one of Pico's interviews. It was actually Stephen Bradley. Been quite impressed with Stephen Bradley on the RTE panel for some of the games, and it was great to have him on it for the game against the Cape Verde game against Spain. But he has thrown it out there that yes, great, the whole David and Goliath thing, but Pico's got quite a lot of experience from playing against some, fairly top class international footballers, virtue of Shamrock Rover's exploits in Europe over the last few years. And look, you love to see the best players in the league tested at that level, and it would be brilliant to see at least one of our clubs progressing onto the group stages of European football again.
Yeah, I think there was a great clip actually doing the rounds. Zlatan Ibrahimovic was on TV in America, and they were interviewing Pico, and Pico mentioned that he had marked the big man in European game against Milan in Halle a few years ago. So you're dead right. He has built up a lot of experience, which has stood him in good stead at the World Cup so far. Just before we move on to looking ahead to this week's League of Ireland game, you mentioned one of the standout results of last week was Derry City's 4-1 win against Bohemians. I don't think too many saw that coming. But the feel-good factor of that result didn't last that long, because on Saturday, speaking of the RTE World Cup panel, you mentioned Stephen Bradley's been on it. James McClean has been on it as well. And he dropped a bit of a mic drop, didn't he, on the panel on Saturday. Said that he hasn't really enjoyed being home, and seemed to allude to maybe a few things he's not happy with behind the scenes at Derry City. Now, people are kind of drawing their own conclusions. Was he having a dig at the manager? Was he having a dig at the owner or people involved with the club? We're not really sure. But either way, national television, was that the place for James McClean to air his grievances?
No, sure. Look, it certainly wasn't. There's no point saying we're surprised either, though, is there? He doesn't tend to follow the rules by and large, so he doesn't. I mean, look, James wouldn't be one to hold his tongue at the best of times. He's certainly not going to be one to hold his tongue the morning after or the day after a game in which he came on with 3 minutes left. You can imagine that might have stoked him up a little bit further. So it might. So listen, yeah, it's. You'd have to feel for the manager. Look, he would be one of the only managers in the league that I wouldn't really know or wouldn't have had any conversations, but I can still kind of feel for him because his team have gone and got a great result, and he must finally be thinking to himself, not so bad. Finally, a weekend where I can enjoy myself a little bit more, or that there's a few positive news stories and positive headlines around the team, and yeah, what within the next 24 hours, the result nearly becomes old news, and all anybody wants to talk about is James's cryptic but not so cryptic interview, I suppose. And it's not even like they went mad in for him. It's not like they required a huge amount of prodding. It wasn't that they were going after a news story, I would have thought, with their line of questioning.
The question was, how's your family finding it been back home? It wasn't exactly, as you said, an overly aggressive line of questioning. So it seems like he had it in the back pocket ready to go, which is bizarre. You just wonder what the scene has been like at the training ground this week. Has there been conversations had, or who knows? Away from James McClean and Derry City, just the other results for anyone that missed them. Dundalk winning 1-0 in Cork. I was nearly going to say in Galway against Galway, but beat them at Turner's Cross with a last minute goal. We talked about that situation on last week's show, of course. Pats beat Drogheda 2-0. Waterford 4, Sligo Rovers 0, and Shelburne 2, Shamrock Rovers 1. They were the two big results, really, particularly that win for Waterford. It really breathes life into their survival hopes.
Yeah, it certainly does. But the wrong man done all the damage for my bet of the week. Unfortunately, Kieran, I said Waterford would win. If you told me they were going to win 4-0, I thought I would have said that Tommy Lanigan is definitely getting at least one of the four. But no, Podge did all the damage this time round. But that's why I've said on numerous occasions that I give them a chance. I know the gap is huge, not so huge now, still pretty big. But I give them a chance because they've got two centre forwards that honestly would make it into the starting 11 of almost any team in the league, and that's going to give you a massive chance. And look, I've kind of been consistently saying that I think they look a different side since the new manager has come in. I was confident they'd get that win. I didn't think they'd go and hammer Sligo as comprehensively as they did, but that will give them real belief. It certainly will give them real belief. The other one, yeah, as you were running through them, I suppose, I was in Tolka Park myself for what was a cracker of a game, an absolute cracker of a game, Kieran. Often enjoyed being at a game for in as much in a long time. Just couldn't believe how much attack and intent both sides showed. It was like a game that an end of season game that a point wasn't worth anything to either side. They just kept taking off more defensive minded players and throwing on even more attacking minded players as the game was a draw, which was brilliant to see, absolutely brilliant to see. And I also think that the new rules might have fed into it a little bit. Everything seemed to there wasn't a moment to catch your breath. Like all the kickouts were fast, the throws were fast, the substitutions were fast. I thought that was a big upside to everything as well. And a brilliant result for Shelburne in that game, obviously.
Right, looking ahead to this weekend's games then, Shane, we will start with Drogheda United against Shelburne, a Shels team who must have got a massive boost beating the champions at home last time, particularly given their issues at home up until that point. But I think I've been alluding to it in recent shows. I'd be a bit concerned about Drogheda. That's 3 losses in their last 5 and no wins in that time now. They currently sit to 8th in the table, just 2 points above the relegation playoff position.
Yeah, it's a tough run they're on at the moment, Kieran, without a doubt. And look again, I suppose the one advantage that Drogheda have is that it's never a surprise to them. The only surprise is when they're kind of outdoing expectation, which they're able to do in fits and starts. But the fact that they've slid down, found themselves in this situation, there'll be no repressing any panic buttons at the club. They're well used to dealing with scenarios like this, I think. But they are struggling at the moment, that's for sure. And they could do with a handier game than the one they've got. I think you've just said there, Drogheda, no wins in their last 5. They're coming up against a team who have no losses in their last 5, and as I said, an extremely impressive performance on Friday night. I think in Harry Wood, they have arguably the informed player in the league. He was absolutely scintillating on Friday night. He's gas. He actually had a few bad moments as well where he does silly things and gives the ball away. He's just like he's at the center of everything, really. So he is. You definitely wouldn't go home saying that that you didn't see him or he didn't factor in the game. But the good stuff he does is top class. Look, the big thing for Shels, no more than any of the rest of them that are trying to chase Rovers, I suppose, is just trying to put a level of consistency into their play, and I think that's got to be a massive motivating factor for Shels, and I do expect them to deliver a big performance on Friday night and go up to Drogheda and yeah, take the win away with it.
Okay, I was going to say the saving grace here for Drogheda is home advantage. They're unbeaten in their last 4, whereas they've lost their last 4 away. So that's one thing. But second best away record in the country this season. So I think given what happened in the last round of matches, it's difficult to get away from Shelbourne there. Shelbourne 10-11 to win the match. Are you happy to row in at that price?
Yeah, would be, yeah.
Okay, we'll move along. Galway United against Derry City. As I said, Galway suffering a last minute defeat against Dundalk. Dundalk probably were the better team, probably did just shade it and deserve that late winner last time. Up against a Derry team who you'd like to think have got a bit of confidence behind them after that win against Bows. But with everything going on behind the scenes at Derry, it's difficult to know what type of mood is it within the camp. A couple of players been let go yesterday as well, including Ben Doherty, who had a very interesting and lengthy statement up on his socials.
Yeah, and look, it's with Galway in this one, you kind of know what you're going to get. It's the reason that it's so hard to go near from a punter's perspective is exactly as you've outlined there. Like, what are we going to get from Derry? Like that was, I would think, their best performance of the season last Friday night, pretty much. And when you've got James Clark in that kind of form, he's as good as anybody around. And again, that's maybe the 3rd time this season that he's properly performed. And it's not that you're looking for him to perform. I know what, if they played 21 games, you're not looking for him to be at that level every single week. But, you would like more than 2 or 3 of those performances to date. And you would like his lesser performances to still have been a 7 out of 10 because he's just such a talented boy. And it is so good to see him in full flow like he was last Friday night. Yeah, like what way do you err? What way do you err on here? Are we going to see some sort of bounce or uptake in Derry's form? You'd be a brave man to stick your neck out too far on it with everything that's going on in the background. And I think I would probably take the safest route here and probably hedge for a potential draw on this one.
And I think that's the market I'd be looking at as well. They've struggled against Galway in the last few meetings. They haven't won 3 of the last 4 meetings between the sides. Galway looked a little bit blunt in attack last time against Dundalk. I think a draw is probably a good option there, Shane, at a price of 9-4. We've got Sligo Rovers going to St. Pat's on Friday night. I'll be on LOI TV for this one.
Yeah, very good. It's comprehensive winners from last weekend versus comprehensive losers from last weekend, really, isn't it? Sligo they'll have to be concerned with just how comprehensive that win was. They really didn't show up. The manager said as much, in fairness to him. There was no hiding place. He came out and, again, a good manager to back his players by and large, but he couldn't. There was no point dressing this one up too much. And we'll be looking for a bounce in them. But again, when we speak about Drogheda having a tough game, I think this is a very tough one for Sligo as well. When you've been beaten that that poorly, or you performed that poorly and you're looking to bounce back with a big performance, I mean, they could do a lot right. He could get a very improved performance, and I think he will. I think he will, because there's such buy-in to the manager there. I think he will get a very improved performance on Friday night. But I don't think that necessarily means they get anything from the game either, because an improved performance could see them come out still with with nothing to show for it. And I think that's going to be the case, to be honest with you. Again, Pats, we've spoken about them. It's again, when they're on it, very, so good. Keane Levy, I spoke about, so Clark probably so far, Wood so far, he's absolutely in that bracket, isn't he, as one of the top performers in the league. And you'd love to see them go on a run now of 3, 4, 5 wins. That's probably what it's going to need, that many in a row, to really try and make a title race out of this. But I do think this one is primed for 3 points for them.
I think most people seem to have Pats down as one of their bankers this week. Now 1-4 is maybe a bit short, but I think it's very difficult to get away from a home win there. Is there any other angle you could have a look at there to give us more value? You just want to keep it simple?
Look, I do think they'll win it reasonably comfortably. I think, yeah, if you were trying to bump up your odds with an Acca, you might throw them in there -1. I do think they could be 2 goals between the sides.
Okay, so Shane Keegan going -1 there. St. Pat's in that game against Sligo Rovers, -1 is currently 4-5. So you're definitely getting a bit more value there with that one. And then we've got Waterford against Shamrock Rovers. I think this could be a very interesting game down at the RSE after that big confidence booster for the Blues last time out.
Yeah, I think it definitely will. It's it's one where Waterford again, they're on such a good roll. They would love to keep the momentum going and all of that. This is as tough a game as they'll get away to Rovers. Is probably the only thing that they would get anyway, tougher. But they're going to have a huge amount of self-belief at the moment, Kieran. They're definitely going to have a huge amount of self-belief at the moment. And I think they could make it very, very sticky for Shamrock Rovers. Look, the Rovers' performance Friday night was actually decent. I think they just missed that. And listen, we've spoken about it before, so it's no major surprise to us. They just missed that clinical, cutting edge, box in the box type of player. I mean, there was, I commented on it during commentary. I think Graham Burke, Dylan Watts, Endis Stevens at one stage. There was a fourth one, Subwali. There was 4 occasions where a ball literally fizzed across the 6-yard box, where you're saying, look, somebody has to be on the end of that. You have to. There's too many balls going into good areas there that are being passed up by somebody not being clinical and just sniffing out a tap-in. Literally 4 tap-ins for somebody who was capable of being a Johnny on the spot. But the general performance was very good. It wasn't like their performance fell off a cliff. But I don't know. I'm surprised probably that they haven't started Michael Noonan more often in that 9. I'm sure he's got a fair share of starts, but I was surprised he not handed the 9 jersey on Friday night.
I
And I
suppose
think
there's been a lot of speculation about a possible move for him, so maybe there's
yeah,
something in that.
100%. Yeah, there could be all sorts of conversations going on in the background there that could be affecting it. But look, I think that'll definitely be the case if he's not handed the jersey this week. I would have thought it would be a no-brainer to hand it to him this week. But going back to it, I think Waterford could make it very, very difficult for them. And I'd be interested to see what sort of odds you'd get on double result, even Waterford win or draw, double result, or possibly Waterford +1, which is effectively near enough the same.
Yeah, we can have a look at a few of them. Waterford draw no bet is 3-1, and I will have a dig for those other markets for you as well. But just having a look here, Rovers obviously will go in as favourites, but in the last 4 meetings between these, Rovers have won 3 of them, but the 3 wins were all by the odd goal, and they've played out a 1-1 draw down in the RSC earlier on in the season. So, and look, we've seen with Rovers of late, they're not impenetrable. They've lost 3 of their last 5 games. Now, a lot of the time when they lose, you hear that they've played very well. They're very unlucky to lose, but they are losing games, maybe more than you'd expect.
Yeah, no, listen, there's no doubt about it. I mean, the reason that Rovers have the cushion they have is because of the fatalities with all of the other teams, really. So it is, they're just, there's nobody putting the squeeze on them. I mean, let's be honest, 21 games, 40 points, that shouldn't be a good enough points tally for them to be 5 points clear. It absolutely shouldn't. And I'm sure, when the management team are setting out their goals for the first half of the season, they would have expected to be on more points and would have expected to need more points than they currently have. And as we said at the start of the show, with Europe starting to come on the horizon, they definitely need to show an upturn, and certainly in consistency.
Double chance, Waterford 27-20, and the Blues +1 on the handicap is the same price because, as you said, essentially the same sort of thing. So give us your thoughts on that one. Give us your selection.
Yeah, I would be tempted at that. I do think Waterford can make it very, very tough for them, and probably get a draw out of it. So I'd like to see the draw as a winning bet rather than just a return of mistake, I suppose.
We'll go double chance.
Yep.
Double chance, 27-20. And that leaves us with one more game. That's the live game on Friday night on Virgin Media. Bohemians against Dundalk. We always talk about it. The pressure is never too far away for Alan Reynolds when they lose a game, particularly when they lose by 4-1 against an out of form Derry City team. That'll have brought some questions to Alan's door. And Dundalk just continuing they picked up where they left off before the summer break with that brilliant win against Galway last time.
Yeah, look, I suppose looking at Bows first, it was a bad result for them. There's no doubt. I think a lot of us were confident, given Derry's woes, that they would be able to go and get a win there. Yeah, look, you can put whatever, and it seems to be not. We keep saying it. It seems to be nothing but highs and lows with Bows. Nothing but highs and lows, either in terms of their long-term form or even across the last 5 games. No draws. You can look at their last 5 games and say, well, they've won 3 of their last 5. That's not bad going. Or you can look at it and say, oh, they've lost 2 of their last 3. It depends whether you're the glass half full or glass half empty, depending on which angle you want to come from. Look, it's third versus fourth. There's one team that would have been an awful lot more happier than the other if you told them it was going to be third versus fourth heading into this stage of the season. Obviously, that's Dundalk, who've just done so well. And we spoke about how would Dundalk handle when they inevitably hit that sticky run. And the sticky run did come, absolutely. They did go a few games where results were disappointing. And they've well and truly bounced back out of it. 3 wins in the last 4 is superb form. And again, playing such an attractive, high tempo style that's deservedly bringing a huge amount of plaudits to Kilduff's doorstep. I think they're going to make this one very, very hard. I think it is one of the harder ones to call. I'm looking around and I'm trying to come up with my Acca. It's been the case in a few weeks, I suppose, Kieran, where there's probably 2 that you're fairly sure of, and then there's one that that could be the one that brings me down. I'm edging with Bows here on this one. I think they have to bounce back after a result like that. I mean, things were looking so good there for a few weeks. It's such a poor performance coming out of nowhere. I think they will bounce back, but you can hear it in my voice. I'm not saying it with a huge level. So.
Yeah, as I said, I watched Dundalk last Friday against Galway, and they played some really nice stuff at times. But Arubi was missing. I think he picked up a knock away with the Irish under-21s, and he was very deserving of that call up after his performances this season. But he picked up a knock. I'm not sure whether he'll be fit for this or not, but they did definitely miss him on Friday. There was a couple, a bit like the game you referenced earlier, where there was some wonderful balls fizzed across the face of goal. A couple of times Dundalk players got close to turning them home, but didn't. Danny Mullen, who's only just finding his feet again after a long layoff, he missed an absolute sitter-headed chance from no more than 6 or 7 yards out. So they did have chances to make that win a bit more comfortable against Galway. So I'd be more, if I knew Arubi was definitely going to start, I'd be more confident of Dundalk maybe going up there and winning without him. I still think they're probably capable of coming away with a point, but they did lose 3-1 to Bows earlier in the season. I was at that game, actually. Dundalk dominated the first half, and then they got a red card and a penalty in the second. So you could probably put a line through that a little bit. But yeah, I think this is a toss of a coin, to be honest.
No, listen, it is a very tough one to call. Look, they're 2 teams that, given where they're at and how they're playing at the moment, you're probably maybe, well, in my opinion, you're probably maybe just edging with the one that has the home advantage, that might just give them that slightly better chance,
Yeah, so you're going with a Bows win there against Dundalk, is that right?
That's it.
Okay. 9-10. I think that's a tentative vote for Bows there from Shane. So let's recap his 5 selections. He's gone with a Shelbourne win against Drogheda, A draw in the Galway Derry game. Pats -1 against Sligo. Waterford double chance against Shamrock Rovers, and a tentative vote for Bohemians against Dundalk. And that Acca comes to just shy of 49-1. So if you want to build that for yourselves, you can do that on the Bar One Betting app and on bar1betting.com. As for your best bet this week, Shane, you're looking at the Shelbourne game.
Yeah, I am. As I said, really, really impressed with them last Friday night. That's for sure. Harry Wood, the fulcrum to absolutely everything that was going on the field, and obviously has the added bonus of penalties, which are always a real chance when you have somebody as quick and as lively around the box as Meepo and that as well. So yeah, I'm going with Shelbourne to win it and Harry Wood to get himself on the score sheet.
I think you described him earlier as being one of the best players in the league. His manager, Joey O'Brien, came out and said that he is the best midfielder in the league after that win against Shamrock Rovers. So yeah, he's very much in vogue at the moment. Harry Wood, Shels to win, Harry Wood to score, away to Drogheda. That was 13-8. We'll boost that to 15-8 on the app. And as for our in-shop boost this week, it's your Acca. You've got 3 teams in there, is that right?
Yeah, I have. Look, as I said, the Pats one, I'd agree with you, it does look the banker. We've been made look stupid on these a few times, but it does look the banker, so we'll go with that. Dropping down to the first division, UCD very much back in the groove last weekend. A massive, comfortable win for them, and I think they'll do the same again, to be honest with you. And then, yeah, look, I wanted to hold off on the Shels game for me bet of the week, and I have no idea what way Galway and Derry or Waterford or Rovers are going to go. So it leads me back to the apprehensive prediction of Bows to come out on top against Dundalk.
Okay, so there you go. That's Shane's treble, Pats, Bows and UCD. Although in UCD 5-0 winners in the first division away to Finn Harps last week. I know Harps not having a great season, but to go to Donegal and win 5-0, I think it's a sign of what we've been talking about when we have talked about the first division on the show this season. That is a UCD team that is progressing at a rapid rate of knots. You've talked about Bows and Pats, so we don't need to go any further on those. But the treble there would have paid 11-4. We're going to boost that to 100-30 in all of our shops for this week's League of Ireland matches. So, and that was this week's episode of League of Ireland Lowdown with myself, Kieran Burke and Shane Keegan. Make sure you're subscribed or following us on Spotify or on YouTube. And until next week, thanks for tuning in.